Well, greetings everybody from Northern Ireland. The sun is finally shining here. It's a great pleasure and a privilege for me to introduce our next speaker, Professor Bill Hunter. So, Bill and I have worked together for about 20 years. Bill is based at the University of Calgary. He is a pioneer in the use of, excuse me, technology to connect schools together for intercultural education. But what he's going to be talking about this afternoon is his most recent research, which is the application of AI in online discussion. So I may be right or maybe wrong, Bill, but I think this might be the first time you've presented in an international forum on this groundbreaking and fascinating work that you're doing. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Good afternoon, all. Thank you very much, Roger. That was kind of you. Um, the you're right. This is the first time I've spoken to an international forum. I've spoke about this topic. I've spoken to several university meetings around Canada, but this is a little bit new for me. So um, let me just begin by sharing my screen here. And can I make sure with everyone that you are seeing the image that says
Yep.
building conversation groups?
But
Okay.
it's not in, yeah, now it's fine. That's perfect.
Okay, good. So yeah, I want to talk about building conversational groups, but I want to talk about them with some of the participants being AI rather than human. I think we're going to see more work in this direction in the near future. But one of the interesting things that I ran into in starting to look at this is that there actually is work prior to the announcement of OpenAI's ChatGPT on using conversational agents with artificial intelligence. So before artificial intelligence became a big issue, researchers were in fact engaging with the kind of thing I'm talking about here today. Um, we have at present a lot of communication resources that we can be using to bring people together. And Roger and I have worked on um, several of such resources with communication between communities in Northern Ireland and Ireland. So, for example, we have the web, we have all of these various and sundry possibilities for engaging with one another and engaging with knowledge. And ChatGPT and AI are only the most recent. I want to pause just long enough to look back about 110 years to a fellow by the name of Abraham Flexner. And I say there's great irony in his story because he was a school superintendent, but he reformed medical education in the early 20th century. He was given a commission by the Carnegie Commission to study medical education throughout North America. His recommendations resulted in a whole lot of changes, including things like moving medical education into universities, requiring people who want to be doctors to have a science degree, um, having professional medical experts actually reading and using medical research in their professional practice. So I say we linger in that shadow because as recently as 25 years ago, I was very accustomed to seeing a lot of commentary that would say things like, Plato would be as comfortable in our classrooms today as he was in the streets of Athens 2,000 some years ago. Education hasn't changed, was the idea. So I think now we see reason for hope. And that's what I was saying. That's sort of the theme. This is a complex looking graphic but it's actually kind of simple. I want to stress that this isn't the result of a sophisticated factor analysis or a multivariate analysis of variance or anything like that. This is simply my having asked Microsoft Copilot, an artificial intelligence program, to tell me what has been taking place in terms of changes in the way, changes in the teaching methodologies that people are using in the last 25 years. So that nothing changes in education, is that still true in the 21st century? So what the AI did was go out and find a whole bunch of resources dealing with anything having to do with teaching methodologies and publications about how those methodologies were differing over the time period that we're talking about. So this is only replicable in the sense that you could ask AI to do this again, and you would probably find something relatively similar. The basic message here, as the title of the slide says, is that change is happening, but slowly. So if you take a look up here to lectures, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, lectures were dominant. Even 15 years ago, lectures were dominant. But as we move into the present, we see that there is moderate use of lectures. It's not the dominating feature that it once was. On the other hand, down here, we see that flipped classrooms, blended learning, and online learning were all niche applications, niche methods at the beginning of this millennium. But now, two of those, blended learning and online learning, fit into the very common category, as do collaborative learning and active learning. And that's kind of my message for today. We are much more inclined to be using these technologies now than we were 25 years ago. And all of these share a focus on improved communication. Just to make clear that this is not, this phenomenon is not limited to one level. I want to look briefly at K-12 education, and you can see that 25 years ago, about 60% of work in K-12 education was done using lectures, direct instruction. Today, that's down to 45% in public K-12 education. The same time period, inquiry-based learning, digital and blended learning, collaborative learning have taken up a bigger part of the pie. So that's K-12. We see something very similar in university education. Lectures still have a more dominant hold on methods of instruction in the post-secondary, tertiary environment. But we do see the same sort of increase in applications that involve more two-way communication. Lastly, if we focus just on professional learning, so medicine, law, education, clinical practice in psychology, and so on, in the last 25 years, there's a dramatic loss in the amount of lecture time and a substantial, but still not overwhelming, focus on all of these other things, all these more interactive methods of approaching teaching and learning, methods that focus on problem solving, on team building, and on simulation-based learning. Simulation-based learning. So I want to kind of emphasize here that the point is not that the tools. I mentioned all those tools at the beginning. We have a lot of tools that are at our disposal, but what matters is not that we have all those tools, but that we design quality interactions with those tools. So we need to focus on they've got that shift from lecture to discussion to collaboration. The discussion and collaboration require a new focus on designing how we engage with one another in classrooms. But behind all of that is I'm going to say this is a belief, not a fact, that learning is social, that learning happens in the spaces between people as a result of dialogue. Now, in saying that, I don't mean to say that I don't think people ever learn anything, ever fail to learn anything from just reading a book or just listening to a lecture. I think it's pretty clear that all of us, at least, have had substantial benefit from that kind of learning opportunity. I'm talking more about a shift over time that recognizes the value of interaction as a way of building learning. And in a sense, this is not new. You could look back to ancient oral traditions. Roger and I share a Celtic tradition. Our bards passed on communication in a kind of lecture-ish format. They sang or they recited poetry, but they did it in a group and people responded and interacted and people sang and engaged in the poetry with them. So I think this is, actually I saw just like a couple of days ago, so I haven't had time to really digest this, but there's accumulating evidence from Israel that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens came together more because of communication and social engagement than because of technical tools or the need to share space or whatever. It was sort of a joint development between those two ancient species. So to turn the focus more a bit on learning, much of what I'm saying depends on the notion that learning occurs when we provide support for people to move within their zone of proximal development using Vygotsky's depiction of how cognition works. We need to have people who can move us from where we are right now through a space where we're open to change. Those people are frequently teachers, they're frequently parents, sometimes it might be somebody who's speaking on television, but somebody who is close enough to what we understand now to help us understand just a little better. But I also want to stress that just putting people into groups doesn't do the trick. Some of those early slides kind of presented group learning as if it's kind of an accomplishment. It's we get in a group and we learn. I don't mean to say that at all. What I'm trying to say is that it's really important for us to think about the structures and roles and norms that we use to engage people in dialogue if we want that dialogue to be productive for learning. And I keep saying people, but I'm eventually going to start talking about AI agents. So learning then is an iterative process. It involves explanation, questioning, challenge, revision. Those are the things that drive learning. And that image is there to remind me that I'm not only talking about classrooms, I'm talking about the learning that takes place among human beings, wherever they are, doing whatever they're doing. The link here at the bottom, I've given this slide show to Manal to share with anybody who is interested.
Sorry about that.
Exactly. No, that's exactly
I was
what
just
saying. The link at the bottom of the screen there is a link to a very kind of exhaustive page on cooperative learning, which is another fundamental piece of what I'm talking about. There's an accumulated body of research showing how we can get people to work more effectively in groups in the form of cooperative learning, specific recommendations and evidence-supported recommendations for how to structure conversations. Now, I want to get to the point where we talk a little bit about AI. On the left, you see that we can have Pinocchio AI, who is going to lie to us.
Mm-hmm.
And on the right, we have Angel AI, who cannot do wrong. And obviously, both of those things have are part of people's experiences, but neither is what we need to be talking about and working with. We need to be focused on getting the best we can out of the tool as it's available to us and as it's becoming available. So I've suggested, the title suggested, and I've suggested as we've gone along here, that my focus will be on AI discussants. The computer language, the technical term tends to be AI agent, but agent just doesn't seem at all right to me, neither from an educational perspective nor from a programming perspective. When we say that, when we talk about an AI agent, we risk kind of crossing a boundary into saying that the AI has agency, that it has the power to take initiative, to take control. That might happen at some point in time, but it's not the case now. What I'm talking about is not an agent that acts on its own behalf, but how we can structure discussants who carry on conversations in ways that we govern and control. So it doesn't act as an authority, even in the sense of saying, right, you got it, Bill. Even saying something like that would mean the AI agent knows what's right and is telling me that I've got it. Rather, we need AI discussants who will focus on asking us questions, that will focus on clarifying what we've said, getting us to clarify. That is, to participate in constructive and preferably, that's a hard word, preferably to have those discussions be academic, be pedagogic. So when I go about trying to create a discussant, the kinds of things I focus on are those things at the top. I like to have a name for the discussant. I don't like to be just talking to ChatGPT or Copilot. I like a character who is the discussant. So like Doubting Thomas would be a character who has the expertise of a journalist and is skeptical. And typically in conversation, questions and probes. Link Bridger would be somebody maybe whose work is in collective bargaining, who's focused on connecting people, who likes to pose alternatives, who likes to pivot, and so on. You see, tomorrow's work, I have to say that a little bit differently so you get the pun. Tomorrow's work is service delivery. This is a professional who's concerned about, what do I do in the lab? What do I do in the office? What do I do in the classroom tomorrow? Tell me something that works. So any one of these characters could be elaborately described in detail so that the interactions that it has as an AI discussant take place in a controlled environment. Okay, we can determine what kinds of conversation the AI will have with people who are working with it. So we've seen from cooperative learning literature that productive group learning depends on structure, like shared goals and positive interdependence. There's years and years, decades of research on Johnson & Johnson's ideas. We've seen even longer research intensity in the 75 years of work on intergroup contact theory, which also defines specific conditions in which productive conversations that can lead to reductions in prejudice take place. That's been the focus of Roger's work since, I almost said 1990, bringing kids together in environments in which they have contact with one another in ways that will result in reductions in prejudice. All of that fits into that cooperative learning model on the right-hand side. We want to move from independence not to struggling with dependence versus independence, as we might in a typical lecture-based class, but rather with interdependence, with learning to work with one another, depend on one another, and get benefits from that process. Just elaborating a little bit further with a bit more recent research, group discussion makes reasoning, uncertainty, and revision more visible. And this is part of why it's important to structure the AI discussion so that the reasoning that we are after is visible. And again, just situating this in the Vygotsky school. Although the date here on this research is 2025, the work actually took place. This was a systematic review of the literature, and the review ended in 2019. They deliberately chose to look at literature up to 2019 about how AI characters could work in graduate and professional learning contexts, even before ChatGPT made AI a household word. We've also seen that AI characters, properly constructed, can support metacognition, reflective judgment, and inclusive assessment. That's a very recent systematic review. So if you want to pursue this further, I have some suggestions there for you. These are resources I used in this presentation. The one that's got a link is actually written primarily by ChatGPT with guidance from me, and is the basis for much of the content in this presentation. So I thought that in addition to having the presentation, you might want to have a textual background for the talk. And with that, I am done.
Thank you so much, Bill. Excuse me. Fascinating. We've got about 7 minutes or so. Can I just start by asking you, have you created any online discussions with AI discussants? And what were the topics that you chose? And why do you need to have an AI figure in there? Why not just let humans talk to each other?
I'm going to bring that presentation back up again because actually there's more on the presentation that I left out, and it deals with I anticipated this question, so thank you. One of the things I've done is to create characters from 1812, because 1812 is a big deal in Canada, the United States, and the UK because of the War of 1812. So I created Samuel Green as a discussant. Samuel Green, as you can see here, was an infantry soldier from New York. He was in the U.S. Army. He believes that the war is necessary to defend American sovereignty, and so on. This person represents a particular stance, an American perspective on the war. Also, I created an AI discussant called General Gordon Drummond. There actually was a General Gordon Drummond. He was the first Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada, And so he had actually played an important role in the War of 1812 as a general. But my character is obviously not him. My character is based on him. And also Akwesasne, who is a Mohawk warrior living in Ontario, what is now Ontario. We can easily overlook the importance of the Indigenous people in much of our history. It's kind of hard to ignore that role in the War of 1812, because I think well over 90% of North America was entirely Indigenous territory at that point in time. And when these discussants talk about the War of 1812, one of the things that Akwesasne is likely to bring up is that I'm going to stop sharing here. That's the end of it. The treaty that ended the war had a lot of provisions that were never met, a lot of promises that were ignored. If that treaty had been actually respected, most of Western Canada and most of the Western United States would still be Indigenous territory. Some of it might be kind of overseen by the UK, but it would still be in the control of the Indigenous people.
Wow. Bill, I'm conscious we've got very little time. Is there anybody dying to ask Bill a question? I've got lots I want to ask him, but I don't want to hug.
Asked if the references can be provided in the chat. References or maybe just share what you're.
I can share. I can share the presentation, the chat.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, Bill, may I just ask you one follow-up question? You've created these characters, you've put them in a situation with real humans. What happens next? Do they just begin talking to each other, or do you have to keep prompting them with questions?
Both of those things happen depending on the group. I've actually so far only experimented with this in small groups, and one of the limitations is that actually creating the environment in which the discussion can take place absent my participation, even just getting the people there in the first place, is extremely limited. I can demonstrate how this works, and I can invite people in to play. But what I want to be able to do, and this is possible, but it requires more complex AI or more than I can afford. It exists, but I can't afford it. That would allow me to say, okay, here's the discussion about the War of 1812. Go to it, people. I'd like to have 4 or 5 groups in my classroom, all carrying on similar conversations with the same characters, but asking different questions in groups of 4 or 5, and then get together to discuss what they learned.
So what this is doing is helping students get a much richer and deeper understanding of a multitude of different perspectives on something that happened.
Yes,
and you could apply that to any situation. It could be in Israel, could be in Northern Ireland. You've just got to create the characters.
You anticipated my beginning, and you're anticipating my ending.
Sorry.
I don't want to suggest that this set of procedures is a solution to the challenges that we have in dealing with one another in lots of places in the world right now. But I think that there is reason to be hopeful that we could put technologies like this to use to bring about similar sorts of changes as what we've seen in Northern Ireland with communication among purely human characters, and as we've seen in Israel as well, where more has been done with artificial reality, virtual reality, which would lend itself very nicely to an artificial virtual reality environment.
Bill, I have a very quick question, please. So, do you encourage your students to design their own discussant, like based on what they have done and what they experience? So,
Yeah,
like,
that's exactly what I think people should be doing, Minal.
No, in your class, I'm saying. I know that, but do you encourage your students to do the same thing that you're doing?
I haven't had a class in which it would be appropriate for me to do that. My classes are kind of general educational technology, principles of learning, and measurement and assessment. So if I had a class with a more social goal, I would be doing that. I can justify demonstrating it, but I can't justify getting them engaged in the construction themselves in my courses.
Bill, I think we've run out of time, actually, but that was so interesting. It's just opening up a whole new world and such positive potential with AI. So I'd like to say, wonderful. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you all for having me.
Yeah, thank you both. Thank both of
you.
you. I really appreciate your participation in our conference and looking forward to seeing you in the coming year. So thank you very much. Howie, I think we're going to have now a 15-minute break so people can relax and join the
Finish the apple that
keynote.
you started.
Now they have lunch because now that we have a keynote. So please stay for our keynote speaker, Professor Andrew from Cornell University. She will be talking about the Unponto regime at 4 o'clock.